When you realized that you had chained the warrior within you like a beast that had been asleep for years, it was already too late. Life had forced you down to your knees. Have you ever wondered why some people collapse in the smallest storm, while others become sharper in the exact same wind? Today, you stand at the dark entrance of your own story, and you are its hero. In the heart of the modern world, you carry a mind polluted by chaos. Notifications, endless responsibilities, empty motivations, unfinished goals, all of them have drained you. And here it appears before us, Heihō, the essence of Musashi's war strategy, seeing the mind as a battlefield, controlling thoughts that rise and fall like waves, noticing the invisible line between attack and retreat. You are far from this level. Right now your mind is fragmented, your focus shattered, your intention scattered. Our modern character's name is Aras, 27 years old, a man who tried to keep life under control but lost the war within himself. His mind is always full, yet never clear. His desires are many, his courage small. He has plans but no resolve. He wakes up every morning, but he doesn't truly wake up. He simply shoulders the weight out of life and drags himself forward. Until one night, in the moment he believed everything was over, a sentence struck him like a slap, echoing inside his mind. If you keep going like this, nothing will ever happen. That was the breaking point. Aras jolted. That sentence wasn't something he heard from someone, nor was it from a motivational video on social media. It was a scream rising from the dark corridors of his own mind. That was the moment of his first contact with Musashi's spirit, because Musashi's warrior first sees the rot within himself. And you are experiencing exactly that right now. Staring at his computer screen, Aras opened something he had postponed for years, Musashi's Book of Five Rings. The first line struck his eyes. See with your mind what you cannot see with your eyes. So what would Aras be able to see with his mind? That he was a coward, or the warrior within him that had not yet emerged? A voice rose from inside him. This is my journey. That realization, born in a dark room surrounded by the walls of defeat, became his first step. And you're not just reading this story. You're looking into the mirror of the same unraveling you feel within yourself. The brokenness in Aras's life is much like the silent cracks in your own. The first spark of Heihō was born right there, the art of seeing the mind. Aras didn't close the book throughout the night. Musashi's words weren't just read, they landed. They shook him, they shifted the ground beneath him, because Musashi's strategy is not simple, it strikes straight into the heart. Aras realized something. I have never possessed a warrior's mind. This realization was painful, but necessary. And you? Where did you lose your warriorhood? Stepping onto Musashi's path isn't about holding a sword. It is choosing to walk barefoot into the dark corners of your own mind first. Aras did exactly that, and for the first time he truly woke up. What he saw when he awakened wasn't beauty, it was the wreckage of himself. That is why the transformation had to begin. Aras took a deep breath, closed his computer, and whispered to himself, "This journey won't be easy, but there is no turning back now. You will walk the same path throughout this story, because this text is not just a narrative, it is a reminder. You are the only one who can begin your own transformation." The war in Aras's mind began long ago. Now it's your turn. The journey begins. When the exam begins, most people look back. You, however, must look forward for the first time, because now you have nowhere left to run. Aras was in the same situation. Awakening had been a spark, but now that spark had to become a fire. On Musashi's path, waking up is not enough. You must begin to fight. So are you truly ready to fight? Aras woke the next morning not to the sound of his alarm, but to the tension inside him. It felt as if an invisible rope had wrapped around his neck, pulling him into a new world. For the first time as he got out of bed, he had one sentence in his mind. The first step of Heihō is not discipline, but perception. He remembered Musashi's words. He who does not recognize his own movements can never recognize his enemy. Aras looked into the mirror. In his eyes, he saw exhaustion, disorder, suppressed anger, the results of years of self-deception. This was where the exam began, the courage to look at your own truth. You feel this too, don't you? There are weaknesses within you that you've never spoken aloud. Maybe the decisions you've postponed, responsibilities you've run from, disappointments you've never faced. Musashi's first principle enters exactly here: elimination, the art of cutting away everything in your life that weakens you. Aras picked up his phone and trembled. Notifications, social media, wasted hours, all of them were enemies. He gathered the first grain of courage and deleted 14 apps from his phone. It wasn't the deleted icons that hurt. It was losing the escape portals he had clung to for years. That is the weight of elimination. You cut and it hurts. Because addictions always make you believe they are feeding you like blood flowing through your veins. But Musashi says, cutting away weak habits is as sharp as drawing a sword. Around noon, Aras went outside. As he walked, he realized something. His mind was louder. Silence was more frightening than he had imagined, because silence exposes the dark rooms of the mind. This is what Shoshin is, an extraordinary state of awareness. Everything you normally overlook suddenly becomes visible. As Aras walked, for the first time he heard the crowd. For the first time he saw people's faces so clearly. Everything had sharpened. The things he had run from were surfacing. Have you ever felt it? That sudden, everything is too much feeling in the middle of daily life? That is the doorway of Shoshin. Aras didn't even realize he had walked through that doorway. Musashi's second teaching was touching him invisibly. Zanshin, a state of being fully awake to the entire moment. A warrior does not merely observe his surroundings, he passes through them. Aras stopped for a moment as he walked. The air was cold. The sounds around him were chaotic, but for the first time he was standing in the very center of life. His mind was not running away. It was present. And you, when was the last time you were truly there? When Aras returned home that evening, he was tired but strangely calm. Because he had won his first small victory of the day, he had not escaped. Sometimes the first step of fighting is not attacking, it's not running. Elimination, Shoshin, and Zanshin. When the three came together, a transformation began within Aras. That transformation showed itself physically as well. That night he cleaned his room for the first time. He wiped away the chaos on his desk. A warrior cannot live in disorder. Outer order reflects inner order. As Musashi said, he who sets his space in order sets his mind in order. Aras woke early the next morning. He had no reason to wake. Yet now he had a journey. The first trials were not completed. In fact, they were only beginning. Aras put on his running shoes. He started running in the cold morning air. His steps were heavy, his legs hurt, his chest burned, but his mind did not give in, because Musashi's teaching was now whispering to him, a warrior first aligns with his body. As physical limits break, mental limits break as well. Aras didn't stop. He ran, he cried, he gasped for breath, but the weakness of the old Aras dripped onto that asphalt piece by piece. And at the end of that run, something small yet enormous happened. Aras claimed his first victory, small but real. Do you have such a victory, or are you still afraid to begin? When Aras returned home, he wasn't tired. He felt lighter, because for the first time something was announcing itself. A greater test is coming. And so Act 2 closes here. But remember, this was only the beginning. The harshest storm has not yet arrived. The real battle for Aras and for you is only beginning. Every warrior has a moment, the moment when the world completely loses its sound, when the mind turns into a dark well, when you are forced to face yourself. And now you are entering that moment. Aras was about to take the same step. The previous trials were difficult, yes, but what stood before him now was not a trial. It was darkness itself. Because Musashi's advanced strategic teachings throw you into the void first, then teach you how to climb out of it. So tell me, do you have the courage to enter your own void? By the end of the third week, Aras was born into a strange silence. He was running, reading, applying, yet there was a weight inside him he couldn't describe. As if instead of progressing, he had hit a wall. That morning he woke with a tightness in his chest and a fog on his mind. His goals had blurred. He was even beginning to forget why he had started. This is how the gate of the void opens, quietly, subtly, heavily. Musashi's advanced strategic teaching Heihō enters here. Heihō is not understanding the battle, it is understanding the flow of the battle. If the mind does not flow like water, you will stumble even over the enemy's shadow. Aras had stumbled over his own shadow. He sat on the edge of his bed the moment he woke up. Hours were passing, but he couldn't get up. The voice speaking wasn't the warrior within him, but the defeated Aras he thought he'd left behind. Stop. You don't need to force anything. No one is seeing you anyway. You can't change. The voice was familiar. I know you recognize that voice too. In that very moment, a realization hit him, tightening his throat. I am my own enemy. This is the collapse moment, the moment the warrior's mind shatters, the strategy falls apart, and motivation rots. But Musashi's sharpest strategic transformation appears exactly here. Mushin, no mind. The cutting of thought's noise, the temporary dissolution of selfhood, the survival of pure awareness. Aras sat on the cold floor. His eyes were open, staring ahead, but seeing nothing. His mind was filled with screams, yet suddenly a silence fell, as if someone had said, "Don't speak anymore." And in that instant, Aras thought of nothing for the first time. He stayed in a moment where he clung to nothing. This is the passageway of Mushin, reducing the mind to zero. No past, no future, only being. The raw form of existence terrifies you. It terrified Aras too, because when you enter Mushin, you witness the collapse of your false self. Aras asked within himself, "Then who am I?" No answer came. The void, a real void. But that terrifying void is also the soil of rebirth, because Musashi's teaching of the void says, the void is the source from which all forms arise. Aras rose from the floor. He didn't know whether minutes or hours had passed. Time had dissolved. That brief moment of nothingness taught him something. I do not know myself yet, but I will. This was the first great awareness, an epiphany, burning in his chest yet opening his mind. The next day, Aras went back to the park, not to return to his old routine, but to observe himself. He didn't run, he only walked. He noticed the direction of the wind. He felt the soil beneath his feet. He listened to the rhythm of footsteps around him. After entering the void, the world becomes clearer, because Fushin, the immovable mind, begins to be born. Fushin is the state of remaining centered even while emotions pass through you, the inner pillar that does not fall even in the middle of a storm. For the first time, Aras realized he was not his emotions. That day he clung to neither anger nor resentment nor fear. They all came, passed, flowed. He simply observed. So I am not my emotions, he said. These new fragments of self gave him strength. But the most important step had not yet come, strategic transformation. The essence of Musashi's void strategy is not only to understand feelings, but to see all attacks of life through a different lens. That night, Aras wrote 3 words in his notebook. See, don't react, apply. These 3 words were the modern translation of Heihō. The next morning, Aras received unexpected news. A major project at work had been canceled. Months of effort vanished in a moment. At first he felt tightness in his chest. The old Aras would panic, rage, feel inadequate. But this was where Shoshin took over. Aras took a deep breath, organized his desk, and simply said, "This is not my battle. This is my flow." This was the heaviest test, to watch the outer world collapse without letting your inner world collapse with it. Aras did not collapse, because the time of his new self had come. As he walked home that evening, one simple but immense truth passed through him. I am no longer who I was. This sentence was not a victory, it was a birth. Musashi's harshest lesson was complete. You cannot create yourself without destroying yourself first. Aras had risen from his own ashes. A warrior had now been born, though mastery was still far away. Awakening was complete, trials were surpassed, the void had been conquered. But now it was time to build form out of that void. This new self was not only strong, it was strategic, aware, unshakable. Life's blows could no longer knock him down, because now there was no ego, only a center. The heaviest trial is behind you, but remember, mastery is another battle. Now the real struggle begins. The new you must take up the sword. Mastery is not a staircase. It is a door you cross once and never return from. And you, right now, are standing at that very door. Aras had reached the same point. He was no longer fragile, no longer an ordinary student. What brought him here wasn't strength, but the courage to be reborn after collapsing. So tell me, are you ready to walk into your own mastery? The morning Aras emerged from the void, he looked into the mirror with different eyes for the first time. The trembling in his gaze was gone. His expression was sharper, clearer, and deeper. It was as if a shadow had been lifted from him. He was no longer a prisoner of his emotions, but their master. He was no longer being blown around by the winds of mental chaos. He stood in the center of the flow. This is the first sign of mastery, unshakability. In Musashi's teachings, this point is called sutemi, the courage to risk everything, to put yourself out there completely, to leave no place to retreat, to burn your fears to ash. Aras was now in sutemi. He still had things he feared, but fear no longer imprisoned him. He was centered enough to walk straight through it. When he went to work the next day, faces had changed. People were watching him, some out of curiosity, some with discomfort, because when a new character emerges, the old world's structure cracks. People feel uneasy when they see a transformed soul. Even Aras's silence carried weight. It was as if he changed the room's energy. The man who used to get caught up in small things and have emotional outbursts was gone. In his place stood someone whose thoughts were unreadable, someone whose presence was felt even when he said nothing. This is how social reverberation begins. People notice your change but cannot make sense of it. Some belittle you, some fear you, some envy you, but all of them feel one thing: you're not the same anymore. This is where Musashi's deepest teaching comes in, Kenzen Ichi. The sword and the mind are one. It means the warrior does not merely know how to fight, he learns to win without fighting. Aras was beginning to learn this. His words decreased, but their impact increased. He no longer entered arguments because there was no point. He wasted no energy trying to prove himself. A warrior knows the battles he will not fight. This is the second sign of mastery. When Aras returned home that evening, he sat down and took a deep breath. The rhythm in his chest had never felt this calm. His mind was clear. There was no war inside him, only flow, only center. In that moment, he realized, I am no longer who I was. But this was not a disappearance. It was a becoming. Because you cannot birth your true self without leaving the old one behind. From the outside, Aras simply looked calmer, more confident. But inside, something entirely different was happening. Inner dominion, mastery of the mind, the hardest power to obtain in this world. Because neither money, nor status, nor praise can make someone unshakable. Unshakability is the child of inner discipline. That night he wrote a single sentence in his notebook. There is no warrior anymore, only the sage. But this wisdom didn't come with age. It came with experience, collapse, rising again, and Musashi's blade-sharp teachings. The next morning, Aras went to the park as usual. This time he didn't run. He practiced the final step of the warrior's mind, observation. He watched the movement of the wind, the landing of birds, the rhythm in people's steps, the general flow of life. This is where the true form of Kenzanichi appears, to harmonize with the world without being carried away by it. Now, even if life attacked him, it would not break him. Loss could not scatter him. People's thoughts, words, criticisms, none of them could drain his strength, because his strength no longer came from outside. It came from within. His sword wasn't in his hand, but in his mind. And so Aras's walk into mastery was complete. But this story isn't only his. This is where your story intersects with it. So tell me, when will you leave your old self behind? When will you stop fighting and start directing the flow? When will you accept that real power is not outside but inside? Every person carries a warrior within, but only a few master it. Which one will you be? The door of mastery stands before you now. The question is, will you enter? This story doesn't end here. In fact, it begins now. If you felt this journey, I want something from you. Where did you find yourself in this story? Which act held up a mirror to you? Which sentence shook you the most? Write it below in the comments. Because transformation grows when it's shared. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the continuation of this series. New videos will open entirely new doors, and if you can't find the words to comment, here's a short sentence for you. I am no longer who I used to be. Write that in the comments. Let it be your first step.